My wife, who I married in a flash, ran away not long after. I didn't get scammed for money, nor for a house. It was just a month of continuous intimate contact. That's all. She left without a single word. After my colleagues kept asking about my wife, I gave up and raised my voice. My wife's done. She's gone, not a trace left. So could you please consider my situation here? I'm the guy who just lost his wife, alright? Jong-hee, who rushed over, froze in place. Hubby. Does this make me Joshi 7 now? A while ago, my dad hid it from me and put my picture up at a matchmaking event. Just when I thought I could finally take a break, he tricked me into coming over. Before leaving, he gave me one last ultimatum. If you don't bring a woman home today, he'll sever ties with me, father and son. After I spent most of the day waiting at my matchmaking spot, I finally spotted someone who caught my eye. A woman who was wandering the overpass, singing for spare change. To salvage the father-son relationship with my dad, I decided to swallow my pride. No! I decided to swallow this fresh face of mine and greet the lady. Miss, do you own a house? She didn't respond to me. She pointed at a QR code on the ground. 15 yuan per song. Don't delay me if you're not buying. I'm chasing my dreams. I scanned the QR code on the ground. Paid 7,150 yuan. Showed her the payment page. I asked her, now can you answer my question? The lady thought for a moment before answering. No house. Do you have a car? I have a two-wheeled one. How's your health? Not great this year. Do you know the law? I'm a legal ignoramus. What's your education level? Just a 9th grader. I stood up, satisfied as I looked at her. Her eyes had the clarity of someone untouched by knowledge. It meant she was pure, simple, and beautiful. It also meant she'd be more likely to bend for money. She's sharp, quick with her replies. She could definitely take on my 7 aunts and 8 uncles. Fight them for 300 rounds. Instead of looking for someone who seems decent on paper. But I have no idea if they'll be grounded or float away once we're married. I'd rather find someone as pure and foolish. So crazy and stunningly beautiful. After all, beauty doesn't lie. After weighing the pros and cons, I looked at her seriously. Miss ... Let's go get a marriage certificate. The lady ignored me. She looked at me with the kind of gaze you'd reserve for a fool. She actually looked at me like that? Well, she's not wrong in her judgment. After a month of overtime, the only day off I had was ruined when my dad tricked me into this blind date. This body with the soul of Walking Dead was long past sanity. I kept talking. I've got both a car and a house. You just need to pack your bags and move in. You don't even need to have kids. After a brief moment, the lady finally responded. I'm your little sister. Well, that's even better. I can still walk ahead of you. Brother, what exactly do you want from me? The beautiful young lady looked calm. In her calmness, there was a hint of faint confusion. Is it because I'm young and have a good body? Is that reason enough? She stayed silent for a moment. Then she answered, that's enough. But now I have money. I didn't quite believe her. I asked, testing the waters. How much do you have in savings? 150 yuan. When people are at a loss for words, they change the subject. Like I'm doing now. I still haven't heard you sing. Why don't you sing a song? The beautiful lady picked up the microphone. She confidently began. With looks like that, it's already enough. Your singing's enough too. I took out my business card and stuffed it into her hand. If you run out of money, give me a call and sing for me. I didn't bring a woman home. But how am I supposed to maintain my father-son relationship with my dad? Dragging my exhausted body, I reached the door. I turned around, deciding to hide from my dad for now. I called up Shen Shujin and we went to a bar. Just as I was about to vent to him, I received a call. The number didn't have any notes. The only person without a note in my phone was that lady. With a hint of anticipation, I answered the call. The voice on the other end spoke first. Brother, it's me. Can you buy me a few more songs? I'm out of money. I seized the opportunity and spoke up. Marry me. Half an hour later, I brought her back home. It was 10:30. My dad, rarely staying up late, was sitting on the couch. He looked like he was waiting to judge me. I predicted his prediction. With a sly smile, I pulled Jong-hee from behind me. My dad held back a curse. He looked at us with suspicion. She's so beautiful. Is she the actress you hired? I shook my head. We're getting the certificate tomorrow. My dad looked at me with a face full of frustration. I just want you to get married. Not to just marry anyone on a whim. Can you at least take responsibility for yourself? I quietly retorted. I didn't just pick anyone. I really did pick carefully after a lot of consideration. Alright, then let me ask you, what's her education? She graduated from Hikiko-Morn University. Lying to my dad. I didn't even flinch. But when I saw Jong-hee's hesitant look, I almost couldn't hold back my laughter. I turned my head and desperately pressed down the corners of my mouth. My dad's expression softened a little. Then, how old is she? 26. Young. Her body's in great shape. My dad's face visibly brightened. Jong-hee sat beside me, smiling and nodding. By now, my dad was beaming with joy. He kept looking back and forth at me and Jong-hee's faces, unable to hide his happiness. My little grandchild's going to be so beautiful, huh? The day after my flash marriage to Jong-hee, I moved her into the apartment next door to mine. That night, I saw two unexpected visitors downstairs in the neighborhood. Bai Ningbing looked worn out. She seemed to be in a bad place. Her life looked rough. She rushed up and grabbed my hand. Su-ching, I missed you so much. I dodged her as if she were the plague. I spoke with a sarcastic tone. Weren't you missing, though? Su-ching, I'm back now. Bai Ningbing was shameless and confident. The more I spoke to her, the more she would think I couldn't forget her. I decided not to waste any more time arguing with her. I bypassed her and prepared to head upstairs. Bai Ningbing grabbed my wrist. Su-ching, don't leave. Let me explain. Jong-hee charged over. She pried Bai Ningbing's hand away and stood in front of me. Bai Ningbing frowned as she looked at us. Su-ching, who's this woman? Jong-hee flashed the marriage certificate. Open your damn eyes and take a good look. Bai Ningbing's face was filled with disbelief. Su-ching, you actually married some random woman just to get back at me? I chuckled in anger after hearing that. I was about to retort, but Jong-hee spoke first. Get back at you. Where does your confidence come from? Can't you just buy a mirror and take a piss to look at yourself? If it wasn't to spite me, why'd you get married so quickly? And with someone like her? Bai Ningbing asked as if it were obvious. Jong-hee rolled her eyes. Her speech was so fast it was like a machine gun. I couldn't even get a word in. Getting married was for you? Why is your face so thick? Don't be so naive, girl. You don't want someone like me. You want someone like you? In terms of height, you're not taller than me. In terms of looks, you're not more beautiful than me. I'm still young and in great shape. Bai Ningbing seemed to have finally found a flaw in Jong-hee. So, you're a little wife, living off a man? I was about to speak up and defend Jong-hee, but she grabbed my hand and waved it in front of Bai Ningbing. Living off a man tastes pretty good. Besides, isn't that what you want to? I'm a woman. I know exactly what you're thinking. Bai Ningbing couldn't keep up her composure and raised her voice. I have a house and a car. What do I need soft food for? Jong-hee looked at her, confused. If you don't want to live off a man, why are you lying on some uncle's lap calling him brother? She then opened a photo and handed it to me. Honey, take a look. This is her, right? I glanced her over and nodded. She really is. Bai Ningbing was so furious she almost lost it. She pointed at Jong-hee and kept repeating you. Finally, she gritted her teeth and turned to leave. It wasn't until she was completely out of sight that I burst out laughing. I didn't notice the woman beside me had changed her expression. I followed Jong-hee upstairs. I wanted to ask why she didn't wait for me. but I noticed she wasn't looking too good. I poked her in the waist. "What's wrong?" She said, "You're eating soft food and it's making you unhappy." Jong-hee shook her head. "If I can eat soft food and still thrive, that's my skill. How could I be unhappy?" I was confused. "Then what's bothering you?" Jong-hee muttered something, but I was too distracted to listen, because my dad was sitting on the sofa by the time I walked in. As soon as I entered, he pointed at my nose and started scolding me. "You kid, don't even close the door when you leave. Is it because the thief hasn't come for a while? Why don't you ask her to sit down?" I nodded obediently. "Yes, yes, yes, you're absolutely right. It's my fault." Dad wouldn't let me argue. The more I went against him, the more he'd dig up old scores. Dad seemed like he still wanted to say something, but Jong-hee stepped in front of me. "Dad, I was too hasty and forgot to close it." Jong-hee seemed to have her own magic filter. The moment Dad saw her, all his anger disappeared. He even smiled a little. "It's fine. The door being open lets the air flow. That's good too." Jong-hee raised an eyebrow at me mischievously, but when looking at Dad, she was all sweet and obedient. "Should we have braised fish or steamed?" Dad didn't mind. "Eve is fine." I closed my eyes and quietly rolled my eyes 3 times. One for Dad, one for Jong-hee, and one for the fish. After Jong-hee went into the kitchen, Dad pulled me aside and started lecturing me for a long time. It was the usual stuff. Be good to Jong-hee, and hurry up and give him a grandson. I let it go in one ear and out the other. Late that night, I was startled awake by a sudden creaking sound from the door. I figured out it was coming from inside my house. My mind ran wild with all kinds of break-in scenarios. I huddled under the covers, protecting myself with the blankets. I don't know how long it took, but the sound finally stopped. Then I heard footsteps getting closer. I slowed my breathing and pretended to be asleep. The footsteps stopped, but I could still hear faint breathing. The person was standing right next to my bed. My heart was pounding loudly in the quiet night, like a drum. After a while, the person gently pinched my face. Can sleep seems quite easy to take care of. Finally, the tension in my chest eased. I lifted the blanket and immediately started scolding Jong-hee. "Jong-hee, are you out of your mind? Why scare me in the middle of the night?" After scolding her, I noticed some bruises on Jong-hee's face. "What happened to your face?" Jong-hee instantly turned into a pitiful little puppy. "Isn't it because of your ex-girlfriend? She drank and caused a scene. I protected you, and now you're yelling at me?" I turned on the light, opened the medicine box, and sat on the sofa. "I'll apply the medicine for you." Jong-hee tilted her head back, gently leaning against the sofa, her eyes fixed on me without blinking. The warm light cast shadows across her face. When I got closer, I realized her skin was so fair, it looked flawless with no pores. Even her eyelashes were thick and long. She looked like she came out of a beauty furnace. I lightly tapped her face with my hand, and trying to sound serious, I said, "Lean your head back a little more." Jong-hee obediently did as she was told, her eyes shimmering like water, her gaze still carrying silent reproach. My face began to turn red. To prevent her from noticing, I scolded her again. "Close your eyes." While applying the medicine, my finger accidentally pressed a bit too hard. Jong-hee immediately winced. I frowned deeply. "Why are you making such a fuss? Just speak. Don't keep gasping like that. Now you're feeling pain, huh? Why didn't you feel it earlier? Why not? If it gets too loud, it'll wake you up." I was planning to wait until morning to grab the footage and show it. Jong-hee flipped over, her eyes sparkling as she looked at me. She seemed to be wagging an invisible tail, looking for praise. When she hit me, it was right under the surveillance camera. I purposely let her hit me. When I hit her, I made sure to bring her under the surveillance angle. And I hit her in places where there's flesh. You can't see any real injuries. Am I smart or what? I curved my lips into a smile, and like comforting a puppy, I ruffled her head. Our hee-hee is really smart. Jong-hee smiled proudly. She casually pulled off her jacket I pressed the ointment on her chest. Jong-hee, what are you doing? Why are you taking off your clothes? Jong-hee grabbed my hand and placed it on her. Did it get hit there too? I leaned in closer to her and lightly touched her chest. Then the company's annual party arrived. It was also known as the grand showcase for everyone. The competitive spirit seemed to be in the air. I don't know if it was a breeze from the office, but everyone had this drive to outdo each other. This time, I was determined to get back everything I had lost. Excited, I dragged Jong-hee to buy clothes. On the way, I mentioned the event. When I brought up the topic of the Wang Mao building, she froze for a moment. Then she quickly returned to normal. Soon, it was the night of the event. When I changed into my dress and came out, Jong-hee was already waiting outside. I didn't miss the astonished look in her eyes. I arrogantly grabbed her hand and pulled it to mine. Together, Jong-hee and I entered the venue. As soon as I entered, my group of male friends rushed up to me. Who is this? Aren't you going to introduce her? I raised our fingers intertwined. This is my wife, Jong-hee. Jong-hee unusually spoke to the aloof Kao Zukun. Hee, what's your background? Jong-hee casually responded, the kind that leaves a trail of smoke. Kao Zukun nodded and walked away, exchanging his glass for another. He no longer seemed interested. Seeing Kao Zukun's reaction, the others grew even more curious. Ku-wen, who had always been at odds with me, looked at Jong-hee with disdain. So young? Which company do you work for? What industry? After one brave soul asked, the others quickly jumped in with their own questions. What's your education level? What do your parents do? I stood in front of Jong-hee, confidently answering, my wife is young, not like your wives, who are almost 20 years older. You can't even imagine how much I admire her. Someone older would know how to treat people better. My wife doesn't work at some high-level company. She stays home and cooks for me, does housework. She's nothing like your wives. Busy all the time. It's better to stay busy. My wife doesn't have a fancy degree, unlike your previous wife who studied law, who only stuck around because you had money, and even took some of it with her. After enjoying their shocked expressions, I proudly led Jong-hee out. Having fought my way up to this position, my perspectives and needs have changed completely. Jong-hee is the perfect woman in my heart. I looked at Jong-hee with satisfaction. I'll give you more pocket money when we get home. Jong-hee smiled mischievously. Are you going to take me home tonight, rich brother? I'm very expensive. Then never mind. Why is it so easy for you to give up? Looks like you don't like me that much. I do like you, but I don't have that much money. Jong-hee pretended to look like she wasn't worth much. If it's you, I'd be willing to take the initiative. As soon as her words fell, my Alipay notified me of a 1,000 yuan deposit. I looked at Jong-hee in confusion. She looked proud, her words subtly mocking others of her kind. I'm not like other women who buy bags, clothes, and cosmetics, so I don't need money. As long as my brother comes home early every day. Having lived for nearly 30 years, I've already understood one thing. Good things should be enjoyed early while they're still good. After we got home, I gently leaned toward Jong-hee. It felt like everything was falling into place. A month passed without day or night. Jong-hee disappeared without a trace. If it weren't for the things she left behind, I would have thought she was just a figment of my imagination. On the 6th day after Jong-hee left, my dad asked about her for the 89th time. This time, I lost my patience. With a what's the use attitude, I said, she ran off. She drowned in the sea. Her bones are probably gone. My dad fell silent immediately. She never mentioned Jong-hee in front of me again. Seeing that this trick worked, when people at the company asked about Jong-hee, I used the same response to deal with them. Work is already tiring enough. Ku-wen grabbed my sleeve again, repeating Jong-hee's name over and over. I didn't even look up. I raised my voice, impatience in my tone. I've told you already, Jong-hee's out of the picture. My wife is out of the picture, and it really hurts me. Can you show some respect for a poor guy who's just lost his wife? Please. Jong-hee, who had rushed over in a hurry, stood frozen in place. Hubby, I'm here now as Shashi 7. I stood up and slapped her across the face. Does that hurt? Jong-hee nodded dazedly. I was overwhelmed with joy and tears. Wife, you crawled out of the sea. That's great, you didn't disappear. I gently patted Jong-hee's waist as I hugged her. She looked at me with a knowing smile. Yes, I didn't disappear. I was saved by his sister-in-law on a small boat. I instructed my subordinates and took Jong-hee home. Once we were inside, I sat on the sofa, silent. Jong-hee, with remarkable insight, walked in and stood in front of me. Hubby, I was wrong. How could Jong-hee ever be wrong? Jong-hee ... Is playing with me really that interesting? I'm not some fool. I had some understanding of the Jong family. The senior executives of the Jong family obediently followed Jong-hee. I understood what that implied. I just didn't expect to get caught up in this drama. Jong-hee knew I was furious. It's no use saying anything now. She obediently squatted on the floor. After a while, Jong-hee cautiously spoke up. Hubby ... I'm hot. I want to turn on the air conditioner. I let out a cold laugh. I shot her a sharp glance. Jong-hee didn't dare to speak anymore. She silently adjusted her clothes. In the end, she was left wearing only a pure white sleeveless t-shirt. I closed my eyes. Out of sight, out of mind. Jong-hee, supporting her aching knees, shakily stood up. She couldn't steady herself and collapsed onto me. I wasn't sure if it was intentional or not. Brother, I didn't do it on purpose. At this point, I was sure she did it on purpose. Jong-hee ... This is pointless. Let's just ... Marrying you quickly was just to deal with the family. Now, even if we ... it's not so bad. After kicking Jong-hee out, I made plans with Shen Shujin to go out and drink. It didn't take long after entering the dance floor before I felt a hand slide up my waist. I was about to shake off this woman's hand when a familiar voice whispered in my ear, "Brother." Under the flashing lights of the bar, I saw Jong-hee dressed in punk style, exuding wild energy. I blinked and looked at her. In the noisy and chaotic bar, I loudly questioned her. "Are you stalking me?" She pushed away the hand of the restless woman beside me. "I'm pursuing you." Her hand still hovered around me. I wriggled out of her grasp. I sat back down in the booth. Shen Shujin asked me, "Who was that person you were dancing with just now?" "My wife." Shen Shujin froze for a moment. Hearing about it is one thing, but seeing it in person is another. She's actually quite attractive. No wonder you're willing to take care of her. I glanced over at Jong-hee, sitting at a booth not far away. I had to admit, in that outfit, she really did look like what Shen Shujin said. Instantly captivating. She's Jong-hee from the Jong family. She doesn't need me to take care of her at all. I spoke with a hint of bitterness in my tone, though I didn't even realize it myself. In the few seconds I watched her, 3 guys had already approached her, asking for her contact details. She noticed me looking at her and raised her glass to me. I ignored her and turned my gaze away. "What's wrong? Are you upset?" She picked up her drink and walked over to my side. Her narrow eyes gleamed with mischievous intent. "What's the joke?" I took a sip of my drink. Shen Shujin shouted from the side, "Su Ching, that's my drink." I awkwardly adjusted Shen Shujin's glass. I tried to play it cool. "I know. I just wanted to see if your drink tastes different from mine." Shen Shujin gave me a look full of meaning. He glanced at me and Jong-hee before speaking. "You 2 little newlyweds are really interesting." I shot him an exasperated glare. After Jong-hee laughed, Shen Shujin poked me. "Are you really not going to reconcile?" She lied to me. I knew she was a domineering ... whatever. "Are you really just unhappy?" There was a secret sense of pride and joy. But more than that, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to keep her. When reason can't solve something, leave it to alcohol. 1 glass strong, 1 glass mild. Pick one. The most important thing is that after drinking, I can just pretend I have amnesia. Let her continue chasing me to the husband's funeral. Adults have to do it too. I drank both glasses. I didn't know how many glasses I'd had. My vision started to blur. Jonghi helped me up and shoved me into the car. I curled up in her arms, tugging at her ear. Explain. Jonghi took my hand off and kissed it. After explaining, will you remember tomorrow? Depends on my mood. Jonghi handed me a card. After a long while, she began explaining. This is something my dad left for my future husband. I didn't mean to leave without saying goodbye. They forced me to leave and lock me up. I finally got one of their subordinates on my side. I snuck out. Then when I saw you, you said I was out of my mind. I felt like the next part was supposed to be an accusation. I closed my eyes and fell asleep in a second. Jonghi chuckled in frustration. This card holds the inheritance my dad left for me, and the money I made from investments over the years. I think theirs. I quietly pricked up my ears. Jonghi mischievously pulled the card back. Hubby, you're drunk. I don't even know if I gave her the card. That money on the card should be considered my private savings now. The next day when I woke up, the black card on me had mysteriously disappeared. She took it as her private money. Let her take it. The key thing is, I want to know how much money is in that card. Last night, she had me on edge. Now I'm left in a state of uncertainty. Jonghi and I sat at opposite ends of the dining table. Neither of us spoke first. Finally, Jonghi broke the silence. Hubby, I have a house in the southern part of the city. I'm planning to sell it. Would you come with me? I'm afraid I might get scammed. Sure. I agreed quickly. Anyway, my wife keeps coming and going. The boss gave me a few days off. Since I have nothing to do, might as well go. When we got downstairs, I noticed a motorcycle parked at the entrance of the building. Jonghi placed the pink helmet on my head. Her gaze was captivating. Hubby, if you're scared later, remember to hold me tight. I know you'll be scared. Why are you riding so fast? What's on your mind? Jonghi laughed but didn't say a word. By the time Jonghi brought me home, my heart was racing wildly. She took the pink helmet off my head. I couldn't tell if it was intentional or accidental, but her hand brushed against my ear. My face immediately turned red. She looked at my flushed face and teased. Brother, why is your face so red? Are you imagining something you shouldn't be? Jonghi was radiating dangerous energy. Step by step, she drew closer to me when I had no room to back away. She finally stopped. I tilted my head, not daring to look at her. I have to admit, this version of Jonghi was full of overwhelming, hormonal energy. I turned to her angrily. Jonghi, what are you trying to do? Sing me like this. She suddenly burst into laughter. What are you thinking? After speaking, she casually placed the helmet on the table behind me. I finally reacted, but she had already won. Jonghi started batting her innocent eyes at me again. I couldn't say a single complete sentence. A light rain began to fall outside. My clothes got soaked. I stormed into the bathroom, fuming. Can't fight, but I can avoid it. I touched my burning cheek. My head felt a little dizzy and heavy when I saw a pile of men's skincare and cosmetics on the sink. I finally calmed down. The pile was full of stuff, clearly for young men. Jonghi was doing this on purpose. She was trying to make me angry, wanting me to curse her out. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Just as I opened the bathroom door, I bumped into Jonghi. At that moment, she was wearing a simple white t-shirt. Her figure was subtly revealed. The sound of her firm, steady heartbeat came from her chest. Hubby ... Are you done yet? Jonghi's voice immediately snapped me out of my daze. I cleared my throat, trying to cover up my embarrassment. Your hand's not that great either. Suddenly, she yanked my hand over. Smirking through clothes, the sensation isn't that accurate. Hubby, want to try without the clothes? I looked at Jonghi, her expression mischievous and alluring. In the next moment, just as I was about to leave the house out of frustration, I quickly pulled my hand back. I said with righteous indignation, "Jong-hee, husband, say something." She smiled like a harmless little rabbit. I couldn't help but feel my heart soften. All the things I wanted to lecture her about, I forgot them at the back of my mind. Forget it. I might as well just keep my distance from her. I locked myself back in the bathroom. After a while, she knocked on the door. She spoke through the door. "I've put your clothes by the door. Get them yourself." I mumbled a response. When I no longer saw her shadow, I opened the door and grabbed the clothes she had left by the door. They were men's clothes. I clenched my fists. What is Jong-hee doing? A test of my patience. After I took a shower, I went into the bedroom. I was a bit sensitive to new environments, so I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Just as I was about to drift off, I heard a distinct sound of a door lock clicking. Jong-hee actually locked her room from the inside. I was still angry. Did she think I was that desperate? I couldn't help but laugh at myself. Hearing that lock click only made me more frustrated. But despite everything, I slept pretty well. When I woke up, Jong-hee had already left the house. I looked at the message she sent me in our chat. "Hubby, there's breakfast on the table and the house keys. Don't forget to lock the door when you leave." On the table was a bowl of millet porridge and some buns. Just then, her phone on the table rang. I thought it was Jong-hee calling, and was about to joke with her, but the call wasn't from her. It was Shen Shujin on the other end of the line. "Su-ching, are you going to the class reunion?" I became hesitant. I was about to casually say no, but when I didn't reply, Shen Shujin kept persuading me. "Su-ching, this time we have to go. You've got to let them see your huge transformation. Remember to bring your wife. Make Bai Ningbing regret it." Shen Shujin still didn't know that Jong-hee and I hadn't made up. He sounded extremely excited on the phone. After a while, I slowly spoke, holding the key to Jong-hee's house. "I'll go." Back in school, there was a classmate I had a secret crush on for many years. Her name was Bai Ningbing. No! Now I should call her Minglian. Since everyone in the class knew about it, it wasn't a secret anymore. At first, there was nothing shameful about a crush. But the shameful part was, my teenage infatuation was exposed to everyone. It was bad enough that it was made public. But then, Bai Ningbing rejected me. Actually, I never planned on confessing. My love was always like a defender on a football field. I was just there to protect, never to take the initiative. And it seemed like I was always one step behind everyone else, while others were already growing taller. I was still short. It used to make my dad really anxious. He was afraid I wouldn't grow taller, while others already knew they needed to study hard to have a bright future. I was still foolishly hoping that I could change the world without putting in the effort to study. But good luck always favors those who work hard. Later, those classmates smoothly graduated high school and got into good universities. I failed the exams and had to repeat a year, so I wasted another year. While other boys were making moves on high-quality girls, I was still daydreaming about being chased by a rich and beautiful girl. That rich and beautiful girl was Bai Ningbing. But real life isn't like the small plots in first love stories. Bai Ningbing didn't like me. Instead, she used a particularly mocking tone to laugh at me in the group chat. "Su-ching, that ugly, dark-skinned, failed grade Su-ching? What a joke, how could I possibly like him?" Actually, Bai Ningbing wasn't doing it on purpose. She just unintentionally sent her true thoughts to the class group. Her careless words turned me into a joke. A joke about a fool dreaming of being with a swan. But I was the ugly duckling. Like many stories of unrequited love, I, the insecure one, became the punchline. So I quietly left the class group and never attended any reunions. Bai Ningbing became a scar I kept deep inside. Over the years, that scar never healed. No matter how hard I worked to change my outward appearance, I dressed up looking bright and dazzling. My personality became more positive and sunny. I worked hard, but some wounds, when touched, still bleed. While other classmates were getting married, having children, and posting family photos, I was still a step behind them. I remained alone. I put Jonghee's key in my bag and deliberately went to the hair salon to get a simple, elegant wash and blow dry. At 8 p.m., I arrived on time at the restaurant's private room. I stood at the door of the room, listening to the sounds of chatter and laughter coming from inside. After taking a deep breath, I slowly pushed open the door to the private room. The first person I saw was Shen Shujin. He waved his hand and called me. Su-ching, over here. With all eyes on me, I slowly walked to the spot Shen Shujin had purposely saved for me. The others were laughing and teasing me. Hey, Su-ching, we were just talking about you. Really, you've gone from being a nobody to someone we wouldn't even recognize walking down the street. Where are you working now? Didn't hear you're still not married? Got a partner? I greeted each of these old classmates one by one, as if these years had never passed, as if I had never missed a class reunion. Just then, the door opened. It was by Ningming. She had aged, and was no different from the other women in the room. If it wasn't for remembering how Bai Ningbing used to look, I would have hardly been able to connect her with the youthful girl in my memories. As soon as Bai Ningbing entered, someone pulled her over. I couldn't tell if it was intentional or accidental, but she ended up sitting right next to me. She looked at me in surprise, her eyes full of admiration. Clearly, I was no longer the dark, awkward, and slightly protruding Su-ching she once found repulsive. But now, receiving Bai Ningbing's attention, I didn't feel as happy as I thought I would. My heart was as calm as a lake without a ripple. I suddenly realized I had let go of the past. Time had changed, and so had I. After all these years, I had finally made peace with my past self. After Bai Ningbing arrived, my classmates let me off the hook and began chatting with her. Bai Ningbing, you're late, huh? You owe us a drink later. You women who are married just don't get it. Bingji was cozying up with her boyfriend, so she was late. I don't have a boyfriend. Bai Ningbing looked a bit awkward. She turned to me as if speaking directly to me. Seeing her like this, some sharp-eyed classmates immediately began teasing us. No boyfriend, huh? Perfect timing. Su-ching, I heard you're still not married either. You guys could totally rekindle something. Didn't you used to like Bai Ningbing? We thought Su-ching was already married. I was just about to speak up when someone spoke for me. It was Shen Shujin. He continued, she's tall and beautiful, and most importantly, she's still young. Shen Shujin's intention was as clear as day. He was speaking up for me. I didn't have time to stop him, and the other classmates were clearly following Shen Shujin's lead, becoming even more curious. Su-ching, why don't you bring her out? Let us meet her, get to know her. I was both a little annoyed and amused. I had never imagined that one day, the past that I had kept buried for so many years, would resurface like this. I was about to find an excuse to leave when the door suddenly swung open. In walked Wang Xiu. As soon as he entered, he started apologizing. Sorry. I'm late. I heard you guys chatting so happily. What are you talking about? Someone said Su-ching brought his wife. A classmate responded to Wang Xiu's question. Wang Xiu let out a surprised "oh," then glanced at me. I didn't want to explain, so I found an excuse instead. She had something to take care of. Something or did you to have a fight? Wang Xiu's words still had that effect on my mood. Su-ching, these days, you've got to be careful when talking about relationships. After all, us men are different from women. I smiled and replied, thanks for your concern. We're doing great, huh? Then why don't you say it out loud? Wang Xiu clearly wouldn't let the matter go. Say it out loud? What are you trying to do by bringing it up? And just like that, Shen Shujin started making trouble for me again. He jokingly replied to Wang Xiu, Say it out loud, and I'll treat you all to the second round. Wang Su threw the challenge out, and the classmates erupted like they'd been given a shot of adrenaline. Su Qing, hurry up. If you can't do it, then you'll have to pay for the second round. Haha. Shen Shujin had been irritated by Wang Su for a while. He directly grabbed my phone from my bag. Su Qing, call her and show her to everyone. The classmates were still egging me on. Just when I was about to announce that I'd treat for the second round, White Ningbing suddenly spoke up. Stop with the shouting. What should we eat and do for the second round? I'll treat. The second round ended up being at KTV, where everyone sang old songs that were popular during our school days. The rare reunion had everyone feeling a little nostalgic and melancholic. The class monitor picked up a bottle of beer and walked over to me and White Ningbing. Su Qing, you have to drink this one. White Ningbing didn't want to make it awkward and helped to ease the situation. Just say if you should drink it or not. Saying that, the class monitor grabbed my unfinished drink from the table and put it in my hand. I took the bottle and sincerely said to White Ningbing, "Thank you." She smiled at me and replied, "Don't mention it." I drank the beer, and she looked at me as if wanting to say something but holding back. White Ningbing was pulled away to sing. While singing, she looked at me several times. I stood up and walked out to get some fresh air. I stood in the hallway and opened the green chat bubble. The conversation with Zhang He was still stuck at me saying I would return the keys to her. I was waiting for a call. I wasn't sure when, but White Ningbing appeared behind me. She suddenly spoke. Without thinking, I turned off my phone. Then I asked, "Why did you come out?" "I have something to say to you." White Ningbing quietly watched me and slowly responded, "Su Qing, I'm sorry." Under the dim light in the hallway, it felt like I was seeing the White Ningbing from my school days again. She was apologizing to me, seeing that I didn't speak. She tried to make it easier on herself. She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. I didn't expect that I'd say this today. If I'd said it earlier, it would have been easier. Back then, I smiled softly. I accepted her apology. Then it suddenly dawned on me. Life isn't just about being the goalkeeper who defends everything. It's about being the forward who proactively takes action. How I've always been a step behind everyone else in life. Maybe it's time for me to take the first step. Just like this time. I ran out of the restaurant, hailed a taxi, and headed straight to Zhang He's place. In the taxi, I sent Zhang He a message. "Zhang He, does what we talked about in the elevator last time still stand?" I arrived at her place panting and rang the doorbell, waiting patiently for Zhang He to open the door. But no one came. I sat down on the doorstep, and soon I saw her ride back on her motorcycle. She asked me, "Do you want to go on a date?" I blinked at her in surprise and let her take my hand and sit me on her motorcycle. She took me to a convenience store. I looked around in confusion, trying to understand why we were here. "Zhang," he said, "is this your idea of a date?" She shrugged. "Come on, I'll take you to get some ice cream." She grabbed a familiar flavored ice cream from the freezer, exactly the same one she had bought for me the first time we met. Then I heard her say, with her usual boldness, to the shopkeeper, "Boss, we'll take all of these ice creams in this flavor." I grabbed Zhang He's arm. "Are you crazy? We can't eat that much." Zhang He smiled. She peeled one ice cream and brought it to my mouth. "Remember, you ate 22 of these by yourself before." She shook the plastic bag filled with ice creams. "This isn't even close to 22. I was taken aback, looking at her smiling face. "How did you remember that?" My mind suddenly drifted back to many years ago. It was on the day I saw White Ningbing send the wrong message in the group. They say eating your favorite food can heal a wounded heart. It was a sunny day, but my mood was anything but sunny. I had no care for my appearance, wearing slippers, walking around aimlessly, feeling lost. I came to buy my favorite ice cream. That day, I bought out all the stock from the shopkeeper. I sat under the sunshade outside the house, eating from noon until evening. I ate while tears fell from my eyes. Shen Shujin called me from miles away to comfort me. But before I could finish the last ice cream, I was sent to the hospital because of a stomachache. It was after that incident that I never touched that brand or flavor of ice cream again. It was you who took me to the hospital. I stared at Jong-hee, covering my mouth in disbelief. Jong-hee carefully wiped the melted ice cream from my hand. At the time, I thought, who would be so reckless, eating so much ice cream without worrying about the consequences? But in the end, you really did end up in the hospital. When she said this, I suddenly understood why Jong-hee called me a coward. She knew all about my story with Bai Ningbing. I really was the coward, afraid to take responsibility, and more afraid of failing. So I chose to be the goalie, the one who never made the first move. Jong-hee continued. When she came to visit me at the hospital, she was told I had already been discharged. I blushed a little. I hadn't told Jong-hee that I left early because I didn't want to worry my dad. So I just quickly left after getting the IV drip. Jong-hee said, I never expected you to still be the same, still so reckless. Ice cream is innocent. Falling for someone is even more innocent. So, I lowered my head and looked at Jong-hee. I could hear my heartbeat skipping a beat. When I heard her next words, I couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. She said, so, when will you return the 9 yuan registration fee to me?